Ages 1 to 100 Unexplained Disappearances. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today the title is self-explanatory. We're going to be talking about ages 1 to 100, specifically people that disappeared and their cases were just extremely mysterious. As we go on with the ages, you'll start to notice different reasons why people become missing. Comparing a case from a toddler to an old person who just walked out of their nursing home are very different, and it's very interesting seeing how they gradually change scenarios. You know, some part of me does hope that bringing awareness to all these situations, showing these people's faces on this video, could maybe lead to even one person being found. I know it's a less than 0.1% chance, but it's just a little thing in my heart that I wish could happen. But anyway, I usually don't ask for likes right at the beginning of the video, but these videos take so long to make. So if you like the video, then it would be awesome if you could leave a like on the video. And don't even worry about subscribing, I'll earn that by the end of this video. With that being said, let's get started with ages 1 to 100 Unexplained Disappearances. Age 1. The disappearance of baby Lisa, full name Lisa Irwin, remains one of the most chilling mysteries in the history of Kansas City. Why? Well, at just 10 months old, Lisa went missing from her crib in her home in Northlands, Kansas City on the morning of October 3rd, 2011, never to be seen again. Her parents, Deborah Bradley and Jeremy Irwin, said they had walked into an empty crib, panicked, and soon after realized someone had taken their daughter. Some of the evidence they found was a broken window, the front door being unlocked, and cell phones were missing. A state and nationwide search ensued immediately, but despite numerous interviews and the authorities' extensive efforts, there was no trace of baby Lisa, and there is still none even a decade later. Now, as with other similar cases, Lisa's disappearance has attracted a handful of speculations, including abduction, parental involvement, and even superstition. There is, however, no concrete evidence to support these claims. Age 2. On one random morning in March of 1991, at around 11:30 a.m., a 2-year-old named Thomas Gibson was playing in their front yard in Azalea, Oregon. Pretty normal kid stuff, but then odd when you learn that this was the last time that Tommy, that was his nickname, was ever seen. Now, strangely, two curious things were claimed to have happened right around his disappearance. First, Larry Gibson, his father, said his 4-year-old daughter told him she saw a couple pull into their driveway and take Tommy. But then, and this is the second thing, Larry apparently had been shooting stray cats at the property 45 minutes before Tommy went missing. That second part was actually so strange that it got Larry convicted of second-degree manslaughter in 1995. He got released a year later though, and still claims to have nothing to do with Tommy's disappearance. Age 3. About 7 months ago in April, 3-year-old Elijah View disappeared in Wisconsin while under the care of one Jesse Vang, a man who was dating the 3-year-old's mother, Katrina Bauer, and he is yet to be found. It seems there's nothing yet to be done in an effort to find him. Authorities say, for instance, that they literally went door to door at a neighborhood in the Two Rivers city of Lake Michigan. They also set up a daily update Facebook page, reviewed over 10,000 video clips, searched land, water, and air, and did lots of interviews as well as followed hundreds of leads. So far, the mother and her boyfriend, Bauer age 31 and Vang age 39, have been charged with child neglect but pleaded not guilty. They are currently in Manitowoc County Jail as the search for View continues. Age 4. Alright, so by now you probably noticed we have to get through these quick if we're going to talk about 100 separate cases. So if you were expecting me to go into detail about every single one, sorry, that's just not the video I'm doing today. We're roughly doing about a minute each, but my goal is to basically tell you guys the point of the situation and obviously a picture of the person along with their location, or at least the location that they were last seen. I'm not talking like a park, I'm talking like the state, the city, stuff like that. But yeah, let's continue talking about age 4. The disappearance of red-haired 4-year-old Marjorie West from a Mother's Day picnic remains one of the oldest unsolved mysteries from Western Pennsylvania. The case dates back to a lovely Sunday afternoon in May 1938 when Marjorie suddenly vanished from a clearing inside the Allegheny Forest in Western Pennsylvania. This is while her family was enjoying a picnic and she and her sister were some distance out picking a bouquet of violets. What followed was an intense search that even had workers from Western Pennsylvania oil fields take a day off work to traverse the forest in search. Definitely not an easy thing to do as they had to tiptoe over rattlesnakes and avoid petroleum wells. Over several months, about 3,000 locals were involved in the search, which employed different strategies including sniff dogs, and unfortunately, nothing came of it. Marjorie is still missing, suspected to have been picked up by a passing car. Age 5. Sometimes the case can be riddled with so many tips that it becomes extremely difficult to solve. That's exactly what happened in the disappearance of Summer Wells, a 5-year-old from Hawkins County, Tennessee. According to Candace Bly, her mother, she left Summer momentarily with her brothers who were watching TV, but when she returned, Summer was gone. She told her brothers that she would be in the basement playing with her toys. Her mother believed someone lured her out of the house and took her. It was unclear why she believed so, as she'd seen no one near the house. It also didn't help that most of the tips were just speculation. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation said they got 650 tips, most of which were either dead ends or idle speculation. Age 6. In 1995, specifically on June 9th at about 10:30 p.m., 6-year-old Morgan Nick asked her mom, Colleen Nick, if she could go catch fireflies with her friends at a nearby park. They were at a Little League baseball game, and though at first her mom was reluctant to let her go, she eventually did. And unfortunately, that's the last time anyone ever saw Morgan. She was apparently last seen emptying sand from her shoes near her mom's car while her friends were just a few feet away. This was around 10:45 p.m., and the friends also said she'd been talking to a creepy man. Shortly after, when the game was over and all her other friends returned to their parents, Morgan was gone. Efforts to find her have been unfruitful. Still, 24 years later, her story remains active as her mom, Colleen, started a foundation in her name to help with cases of missing children. Age 7. Since June 4th, 2010, a boy by the name of Kyron Richard Horman from Portland, Oregon, has remained missing despite extensive efforts by local and state police and even the FBI to find him. In fact, his case sparked such a huge investigation that it became the largest in Oregon's history at one point, including 1,300 searchers and a reward of $50,000. Horman, then a student at Skyline Elementary School, had been staying with his stepmother, Terry Horman Moulton, while attending a science fair. On one of those fair days, Terry said she dropped him off at school at around 8:45 a.m. and saw him walk down the hall to his class. Thing is though, Horman never got to class. In fact, he was marked absent the whole day, and it wasn't until 3:30 p.m. when Terry and her husband had gone to pick him up at the bus stop that they realized he was missing. To this day, no one knows what happened to the boy. Age 8. In February 1985, 8-year-old Sherry got off the school bus at her usual spot in Cabot, Pennsylvania, but then she never made it home. Despite being just 100 yards from her house, she seemed to mysteriously vanish with zero trail. The only hint as to what might have happened was witnesses, other kids on the bus. They said they saw a bright blue 1976 Dodge van painted with a mural nearby as Sherry was being dropped off. That didn't help much because years later, 47 to be specific, the case had gone cold. This is despite consistent efforts by authorities, including processing, quote, a lot of vans forensically. It also doesn't help that every once in a while, someone comes along impersonating Sherry. A recent case of such was just in June of this year. Age 9. Picture this. You're driving down North Carolina Highway 18 in the early morning hours, and you spot this little girl walking alone along the highway. It's raining heavily and the winds are blowing like crazy, so you find a spot, which happens to be about 1.3 miles from your home, turn around, and approach the girl. She, however, runs into the woods and disappears. Soon after, though, you realize what you saw was the genesis of a missing person that would draw national attention. That right there is a summary of the story of 9-year-old Asha Degree, who is said to have left home, maybe she ran away, on February 14th of 2000 with just her book bag. She was never to be seen again. It's thought that she was abducted, but even though her case had some activity as recently as September of this year, no concrete evidence or explanation exists to support that idea. Age 10. The last time Lisa Baum was seen alive was in her neighborhood in McCleary, Washington. This was as she walked home from her friend's house. Her home was just 10 minutes away, but then she never got there. She went missing. This was back in 2009, and years later, whatever happened on that walk home remains a total mystery. Some hope that the discovery of her remains in September 2017 would have shed light on the matter, but nothing conclusive came up. And that's despite the area where her fractured skull was found, just a little west of Ellensburg, being scoured by over 160 professionals and volunteers. How she ended up 168 miles away from her home, dead, is still a puzzle that detectives are hoping to solve. Age 11. In December of last year, 2023, as Fabien Echidini, a French citizen, was driving around at 3 a.m. in rural France, his headlights shined on a sight he couldn't believe. Right there on the road, in the heavy morning rain, was a teenage boy all by himself, with just a skateboard in hand. This was between two villages, and given the hour, this was more than odd. Anyway, unknown to Fabien, he had just found Alex Batty, a boy who had been reported missing in the UK since 2017. Alex had vanished from Spain at age 11 after his mother and grandfather took him on what had been supposed to be a quick family vacation. In such a bizarre twist, Alex had apparently lived a nomadic off-the-grid life, with his mother traversing Morocco, Spain, and southwest France. All that was thanks to a spiritual community that his mother had been a part of at some point. Age 12. On June 1st, 1983, right across from her Gerald Court home in Louisville, Kentucky, 12-year-old Ann Gottlieb went missing, never to be found again. She had been last seen at around 5:30 p.m. at the Bashford Manor Mall riding her red and white bike back home, but then only the bike was eventually found, propped up on a pillar outside Bacon's department store at the mall. Speculation was that she ran away, but her family believed she'd never do something like that. Interestingly, over time, there were alleged sightings of her, especially in the Brighton Beach neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York. However, none of these sightings were ever substantiated. Age 13. There's a very strange case from December of 1996 where two boys, 11-year-old Patrick Warren and 13-year-old David Spencer, went missing from their homes, that being Chelmsley Wood and Solihull, Birmingham, never to be seen again. The two, who are now presumed dead, had gone to visit a relative nearby. This was supposed to take just a few minutes, but they never arrived. Their case, known as Operation Stanley, was briefly reopened in 2007 by the West Midlands Police, with a man by the name of Brian Field, a convicted murderer, being a primary suspect. It, however, went cold as nothing concrete came up in the way of evidence. Age 14. There's this boy, 14-year-old Andrew Paul Gosden, who in September of 2007 took a train from Doncaster, South Yorkshire, his home, to London, and then completely disappeared after. Gosden is said to have left his home, withdrawn £200 from his bank account, and then got a one-way ticket to London. He was last seen on CCTV leaving King's Cross Station, one of the busiest train stations in London, and despite great efforts to trace his whereabouts thereafter, nothing came up. Strangely, no one knows why he decided to suddenly go to London in the first place. His case, though, had a slight moment of hope in 2021 when a detective arrested two men in connection to the disappearance, but then they were let go in 2023 due to lack of evidence. Gosden is still missing. Age 15. Just at the start of this year, 2024, Sebastian Rogers, a 15-year-old autistic teenager from the Hendersonville neighborhood in Tennessee, wandered off in the middle of the night and seemed to have vanished completely. Armed with just a flashlight and barefoot, Sebastian stepped out into the dark, and somehow not even canine units could trail the direction he went. One dog actually led searchers to a construction site, but that turned out to be a false alarm. The only other bit of evidence found was CCTV footage of what looked like to be specks of light around his home at the time that it was suspected he stepped out. He's still missing, and in a rather strange twist, the search efforts turned a little sour after just this month, Dog the Bounty Hunter and Sebastian's dad, Seth Rogers, sent cease and desist letters to social media users who were apparently harassing those involved who were looking for the kid. Age 16. At the height of COVID-19, with lockdowns in place, 16-year-old Owen Harding got into a heated argument with his mom, Stella, over the idea of visiting his girlfriend, Meg Wells Rhodes, who was 280 miles away in York. Owen, frustrated that he couldn't see his girlfriend, stormed out in what Stella, his mom, thought was just a walk to clear his head. CCTV footage showed him walking towards the clifftop area of Saltdean. He's said to have made a call to Meg a little after 6:23 p.m. with his mobile phone, disconnecting at around the same time. And this was the last time he was ever heard or seen. The entire Saltdean community and a team of about 80 police officers began looking, but nothing ever came up. It also didn't help that with lockdowns going on, people were not very cooperative in opening doors, and businesses were not there to avail CCTV footage. Age 17. Speaking of storming off, on May 17, 2001, Alyssa Turney had an argument with her stepfather, Michael Turney. This was in the afternoon hours, and after storming off, she was never seen again. Michael said that earlier that day, he had dropped her off at school, Paradise Valley High School in Phoenix, Arizona, then picked her up at lunchtime, after which they had the argument. Michael and Alyssa's mom, Barbara Farner, later found a note in Alyssa's bedroom saying that she ran away to California. That was strange though, because she left her phone and other personal items behind. Anyway, what followed is even stranger because 7 days later, Michael claimed he got a call from a new number and it was Alyssa on the other end swearing at him. Then in 2008, Michael claimed he believed Alyssa was killed by quote assassins from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers and buried in Desert Center, California. Even weirder, at one point, Michael himself was charged with Alyssa's murder, then later acquitted in 2023. Still though, Alyssa or her body have yet to be found. Age 18. This next one, that of 18-year-old Natalie Holloway, even inspired a pretty well-rated TV series. Holloway, a then high school graduate from Mountain Brook, Alabama, went missing from the Caribbean island of Aruba on May 30th, 2005, with her disappearance soon becoming a media sensation. She had been to Aruba with her classmates as part of their post-graduation trip, and everything had seemed fine up until when she failed to show up for the return flight. She was last seen outside a nightclub, Carlos's and Charlie's, entering a car with 3 locals, Doran van der Sloot and brothers Depak and Sadish Kalpo. They all denied involvement, but then suddenly in 2023, after being arrested and released twice for the disappearance, van der Sloot confessed to having killed and dumped her in the ocean after she refused his sexual advances. Her body is still yet to be found, and he is also yet to be convicted due to issues around the statutes of limitations for the crime, both in the US and Aruba. Age 19. At around 5 p.m. on June 9th, 2023, 19-year-old Maureen Kelly left the Canyon Creek campground at Gifford-Pinchot National Forest in southwest Washington for a quote spiritual quest, and that became the last time she was ever seen. According to some friends at the campground, she simply took off her clothes and ventured into the woods with just a fanny pack containing knives, matches, and a compass. She was expected to return within a few hours, but never did. Now, interestingly, it seems like it was within her character to do something like that. Her half-sister, Sherry Capu, described her as a laid-back, carefree girl, while her friend, Amanda Ziegler, said that the only surprising bit was that Kelly went in without clothes. Anyway, it was suspected she died of hypothermia, but her body has never been found. Age 20. In 2002, at around midnight, Josh Gamond, a student at St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota, left the party on campus and just vanished somewhere between where the party was, Men Court dorms, and his dorm, St. Marhouse. Some say he might have been last spotted at the Stump Lake Bridge, which would have been on his 3-minute walk to his dorm. Anyway, with no concrete evidence, his disappearance has more theories than there are answers. Some believe he might have died accidentally, slipping and drowning while intoxicated. Others think his death was covered up by other students. Some say it was an abduction, while some think he may have been killed in an online date gone wrong, even saying that he might have been exploring his sexuality. In 2023, investigators released photos of 28 men, asking the public to help identify them so they could have information on what happened to Josh. As it stands, no progress has been reported on this case. Age 21. On February 9th, 2004, someone witnessed an accident, a single car crash on Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire. They spoke to a woman at the scene and then left. Little did they know that they would be suspected to be the last person to ever see and speak with Maura Murray, a 21-year-old nursing student at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, who had just been involved in the crash. This was around 7:30 p.m., and by the time the police got there, Murray was nowhere to be found. It's suspected that she died or was abducted, but there was no evidence to that. Multiple searches have been performed at the scene in the area, including the larger Vermont area, but nothing has ever come up. The case is still very active though, and earlier this year, the police released a progression photo of what they believe Murray would look like now. Age 22. In 2014, Lisa Ann Froon, age 22, and Chris Kremers, age 21, set out to hike the famous Pianista, aka Piano Player Trail in Panama. The trail went from the tourist town of Bouquet, twisting up in ladder-like steps all the way to Continental Divide, a point about 6,660 feet. Now, unfortunately, these two women never completed the 3-mile stretch they intended to do. They vanished somewhere in there, never to be seen again. Well, that was until a member of the indigenous Nagob tribe showed up in the local town with Lisa Ann's backpack and some other stuff belonging to the girls. This was actually several months later, and a search of the area where he got the bag reveals part of the girl's remains and some other clothing items. Somehow, even with that evidence, there was no way to tell how the two died or how they disappeared. To date, this remains a mystery. Age 23. Leah lived a challenging life in Durham, North Carolina, and one day on March 9, 2000, partly inspired by Dharma Dums, a 1958 book by her favorite author, she set out on a trip likely seeking self-discovery. Unfortunately, she disappeared somewhere along the way. Kara, her sister, who lived with her, said that she found a note from Leah claiming she wasn't or anything, and next to it a bundle of cash amounting to her share in their monthly rent and bills. A little more digging also showed Leah had withdrawn a few $1,000s that afternoon, and later, some transactions suggested that she was traveling on I-40's end in California. Anyway, the police figured out her last transaction was in Brooks, Oregon, at a gas station, and apparently up until then, she was fine. That's what the security footage showed in March 13, 2000. Her car, a white 1993 Jeep Cherokee, would however be found on March 18th at the foot of the Cascade Mountains off of Mount Baker Highway. Some of her belongings, including cash, $2,500, were found at the scene, but there was no sign of her or her kitten. Age 24. Daniel Robinson's case, which happened in 2021, became a media sensation, but mostly because of an announcement by law enforcement that the remains of another missing person, 22-year-old Gabby Petito, had been found. Some thought the two cases were a clear example of the, quote, missing white woman syndrome, and the media bias against missing people of color. Anyway, that aside, Daniel's story is that he went missing on June 23, 2021 at around 9:15 a.m. after taking off from a job site in Buckeye, Arizona and heading west towards a desert in his 2017 blue-gray Jeep Renegade. A little over a month later, on July 19th, his car was found rolled over in a ravine with evidence suggesting that he crashed while in his vehicle. He was in fact wearing a safety belt. At the scene were some of his personal belongings like his cell phone, wallet, keys, and clothes. It is now over 3 years later, but Daniel is still yet to be found. Age 25. On Monday, October 23rd, Kia, China Crawford's sister, was moving houses. On her way to drop stuff at her new place, she passed by China's neighborhood, saw her, stopped, and they talked for a short while. It was normal for the two to keep in touch as well as check in with their mother. Anyway, they said their goodbyes and promised to see each other over the weekend. However, on Wednesday, October 25th, Kia got a call from their mom asking if they talked to China. She said yes because of that chat she had with China on Monday, but when they tried reaching her together, they couldn't. Her Find My app also returned nothing. Soon after, China became a critically missing person, with her last known location being the 1600 block of Good Hope Road Southeast. Her car, a gray 2012 Mercedes-Benz, was also missing. She's still missing, but this year, on March 27th, police reported the arrest of 32-year-old LaShawn Washington in connection to China's disappearance. Washington is being charged of first-degree murder, felony murder, kidnapping, and obstruction of justice. The case is ongoing. Age 26. Derek went missing around November 7th of 2020, and 4 years later, it's still unknown what happened to him or where he is. According to his aunt on the day he went missing, Derek was expecting a guest at his apartment, Magnolia Square Apartments, and it is still unclear whether that guest arrived and if they had anything to do with his disappearance. According to a friend of Derek, they had been on a phone call, planning to meet later that day at a nightclub. Derek said he was expecting someone over and that he would call him back when they left. He never called back, and that was the last time anyone heard from him. His mother, Tamara Jones, still hopes to find out what happened to him. Age 27. On the night of March 31st, 2006, to celebrate the beginning of spring break, Brian Randall Schaffer and his friends, all students at Ohio State University College of Medicine, hit a bar in Columbus. Apparently, as they partied, Brian got separated from them and they just assumed he'd gone back home. Unfortunately, he hadn't gone back home, and that was the last night anyone had ever seen him. CCTV footage at the club's entrance showed him talking to two women just before 2 a.m., then moving off the frame, although it's suspected that he didn't leave the area. He might in fact have gone back into the bar. With no other entrance, it remains puzzling as to where he went. Some think his friends might have had something to do with it, some think he's living somewhere else under a new identity, while some think the smiley-faced serial killer had something to do with it. Age 28. In July of 2014, Lars Joachim Mittank and a couple of his friends left their home country, Germany, for a vacation trip to Varna, Bulgaria. They set base at Golden Sands Resort in Varna, which was near the airport, and they got to exploring. Everything went well until right about when he was about to fly back home, Lars suddenly took off from the airport, jumped over a fence, and disappeared into the adjacent woods. This was the last time he was ever seen. Several theories came up to try to explain his case, with his mental health in particular coming into question. It turned out that the night before they were to fly out, he and his friends got into a brawl with some other German nationals in Varna, and he got beat up pretty badly, busted eardrum and injured jaw. He got treated, but he might have been suffering from more damage. Why? Well, while at the hotel, he called his mom in complete panic mode. He told her some people were after him, trying to kill him, and asked her to cancel his credit cards. The airport doctor, Kosta Kostov, also claimed Lars had acted nervous and erratic. Age 29. On May 3rd of this year, 24-year-old Megan Rouse was murdered. Later, a 39-year-old Quan County Flowers got arrested and charged with the murder. Now, about 12 days before that, on April 21st, 29-year-old Kaylee Goodwin went missing and hasn't been found yet. What's the connection between those two cases? Well, apparently Goodwin was last seen leaving her apartment on Decker Drive near San Jacinto Avenue and getting into a car with an unknown male. Later that night, Flowers, Megan's alleged murderer, was pulled over for a whole different reason, in the same car that he had picked up Goodwin in. Anyway, according to Goodwin's mother, the day after her daughter disappeared, she received a call from kidnappers demanding $600 via Cash App. Goodwin could be heard in the background begging for help. Police traced the call and Goodwin's cell phone to a house in Houston, and rather interestingly, the homeowner had already been arrested on a completely unrelated charge. Goodwin's whereabouts are unknown. Age 30. One of Michigan's longest-running cold cases is the disappearance of 30-year-old Paige Rinkowski on May 24, 1990. Prior to going missing, Paige had earlier that day, around 11:30 in the morning, dropped her mother off at the Detroit Metropolitan Airport and then visited her friend in Canton, Michigan. At around 2:30 p.m., she was seen at a store in Canton, west of I-275, where she bought a beer. Then she was spotted on the shoulder of I-96 near Fowlerville, talking to two African-American men while standing next to a maroon-colored minivan. It looked like she was upset and they were trying to comfort her. Her car, a 1986 model, would then be found on the same highway with the engine idling and her shoes and purse still inside. This was around 3 p.m. Paige has never been seen again. Age 31. Among the many names on the list of 9/11 victims is Ann Phillip. Unlike many others though, how her name ended up on the list is very strange. Reports say that Ann, an Indian-American physician living in Lower Manhattan at the time, was last seen on September 10, 2001 by surveillance cameras while shopping at a nearby Century 21 store. It's not clear if she returned home after that. However, given her profession, an ER doctor, and the fact that she lived right next to the World Trade Center, it was assumed that she died while trying to help victims during the attack. However, there has been suspicion that she might have been killed before the attacks, and with her body never being found, no one knows for sure what happened. Age 32. On March 17th of 2023, Christina Simpson, Joshua Amos's mother, said they talked on the phone and Joshua was excited about his new job that he just started at Precoat Metals in Granite City. It was long hours, but it paid well. That was on Saturday. Then, in the early morning hours of Sunday, Josh, as was his nickname, went to a club, the Scarlet's Cabaret. This was in Washington Park with his friends. The club was about 60 minutes by car from Granite City, where they lived. At 4:58 in the morning, Josh was seen walking in the parking lot alone. He was then seen at the Jackie Joyner Kersey Center Metrolink, where a bus driver said Josh was looking for a way to get back home, to Granite. He got a bus pass and went to the Emerson Park Metrolink. Cameras spotted him there at 6:45 a.m. He, however, never boarded the train. The last sighting of him was at 7:28 in the morning at EJ Motor Transports at East St. Louis, which was at least 5 minutes from the Emerson Park Metrolink. He was reported missing that Monday morning, but despite extensive search and a $10,000 reward for information, he is yet to be found. Age 33. All these cases are obviously sad, but this one takes it just a little bit higher because Corey Daniele went missing on his birthday, that being August 7th of last year, 2023. At the time, Corey was living with a roommate in Santa Rosa, California, but had texted his mom about a week earlier saying he'd be heading to LA. His mom, Tameka, later sent him some cash for his birthday, but then Corey never replied to her texts. She didn't think much of it immediately until her daughter sent her a screenshot of a guy asking on Corey's Facebook page whether anyone had seen Corey. The guy said he had Corey's phone and backpack. Corey's mom then reached out to the guy and learned that Corey had apparently been at a house in Kerman, California, and had been in an argument with one of the guys at the house before walking out and walking away. This was around 3 a.m. He was reported missing on August 9th, and a search began, but nothing came up. It was also hoped that he'd show up in the Bay Area, where his band, Crumb Dread, had a scheduled performance on August 11th, but he didn't show up. He's in fact still missing. Age 34. Timothy Brady was supposed to start a new job in December of 2022. He was excited about it, and on the 5th of that month, he went to his mom's house to check in on them before his drive from Oregon to Lakeland, Florida. However, he never got started on that job. He went missing on his way there. His mom, Kimberly, said she texted him on the 9th, but he kept talking of my GPS, so she thought he had just lost his bearing. It was, however, more serious than that because his fiancée had also not gotten through to him. By date 11, he was declared missing. 3 days later, his red Dodge pickup truck was found abandoned in Hernando County, Florida, near Weeki High School. It turned out that on the 10th of that month, he'd been seen about 14 minutes away from where his car was found, near West Ponce de Leon Boulevard. He remains missing as of this video's publishing. Age 35. On November 3rd, 2023, Tyler, who worked for the Nebraska Department of Corrections, had been working in Omaha, and on his way home, he picked up pizza for his family. His husband, Marshall Vogel, said they had planned for a fun family movie night with their 2 sons, but things turned sour once a conversation about their divorce came up. Apparently, Vogel had been pushing for divorce because Tyler was, quote, physically and emotionally abusive. That night, Tyler had shoved him, and though it didn't hurt, Vogel called 911. However, in the 10 minutes that it took for officers to arrive at the home in Lincoln, Nebraska, Tyler was gone. He simply walked out into the dead of the night, never to be seen again. Massive searches and social media campaigns went on about him, and rather weirdly, people noticed that Vogel never participated in them. His reason? Well, he said that he stayed behind with his sons to make sure they were doing alright. Age 36. Candy Green Gonzalez's case was so heated that it resulted in the public initiating a petition for the FBI to further investigate her disappearance. Candy was last seen on June 1st, 2021, after her boyfriend threw her out of their shared property in Kentucky, the same night she tried calling her mother. But her phone went to voicemail. Later, surveillance cameras showed her running off to a creek. She seemed distressed. Her shoes were then discovered in the creek the next day, but then weirdly, a search was not conducted until days later. To date, despite the involvement of independent search and rescue organizations, Candy has never been found. Claims have been that due to her father's engagement as a former sheriff of Floyd County in 2013, a reluctance in authorities' interest could explain why they only got involved 2 weeks after the initial report. That's the entire reason a petition had been created to force a quickened investigation. Age 37 years old, Nathan, an adult with Down syndrome, went missing on May 12, 2023 in Toronto, Canada. He had recently moved there to live with his siblings and was known to enjoy walks to a coffee house in the neighborhood. According to his cousin, whom they also lived together with, Nathan went missing when on that day, strangely enough, he left behind his phone and wallet at the house. And despite active Amber Alerts and the case remaining active with the police in Waterloo, no sightings of Nathan have been made to date. A lot was also done to try to trace him in that particular month of May, but despite using tactics like mounted units and police dogs, nothing really tangible about him ever came up. Age 38. Heidi Plank, a 38-year-old mom, was supposed to collect her 10-year-old son from private school in Los Angeles on the 20th of October in 2021. The son had spent some time with his father and Heidi's ex-husband, Jim Wayne, who had then dropped him off at school that day. That was per their agreement. She, however, never showed up. Also, prior to her not showing up, Wayne had noticed that Heidi had been acting weird, for instance, not answering her phone or messages. This was since the day she dropped off their son at his home. In response, and to be cautious, Wayne asked the school to hold his son, Bond, until he could at least talk to Heidi. That never happened again though, because she never showed up. She was reported missing and a search began. Nothing came up though, and even efforts to track her using her car or phone's locator were not forthcoming, as the location features had never been enabled in the first place. Only her dog was ever found, more than 12 miles away from where Heidi had been last seen. Age 39. On May 27th of 2020, 39-year-old Marina Bischoff was arrested in Kansas City for DUI and leaving the scene of an accident. During her arrest, she confessed to police that she had been drinking and was taken to the Shoal Creek Patrol Division for processing. However, she secured a signature bond and was released on May 28th at 7:30 in the morning. It was noted that while in custody, she made numerous calls and while she was released, spent about an hour at a road section, seemingly waiting for a ride. Her last sighting was at 8:30 a.m. that day. How did she disappear though? Did she eventually get the ride she was seemingly waiting for? Well, no one really knows. As strange as things would turn out, on October 20th of 2020, a 10-year-old boy spotted a decomposing body in Shoal Creek, which upon DNA analysis was confirmed to be that of Marina. This was 5 months after she was reported missing. Age 40. In Havinka, Finland, 40-year-old Marie Tanti went out with her friends and husband in August of 1993, never to be seen again. Speculations around her disappearance are tied to the gravel pit serial killer, a man who was thought to have offered rides to women before killing them and disposing of their bodies in a gravel pit. On the day she got lost, it's said that together with her friends and husband, they went to spend the night at a restaurant named Zapata, but she was somehow not allowed in. The suspicion is that she could have been too drunk. Bizarrely, she ended up being left standing at the front of the restaurant while the rest got in. This turned out to be the last time she was ever seen. Her purse was later found within the restaurant, but despite numerous searches, nothing came up, not even in the alleged gravel pit. A detailed profile of the alleged killer was made in 2007, but it didn't unearth anything new. Age 41. Picture this. One day you're meeting the love of your life from social media on his 500-pound fancy boat. When I say pounds, I'm talking about the currency, not weight. Then the next day, not literally, you're gone. And mind-blowingly, your lover won't let the FBI search his boat, which is where you were last seen alive. That's exactly what happened to Sarm Heslop, a 41-year-old Briton who disappeared after meeting her Tinder, quote, boyfriend, Ryan Bain, an American in the Caribbean on the 7th of March of 2021. The FBI got involved and launched an investigation into the disappearance, but strangely, Bain denied a search of his yacht. This is where she had last been seen alive, so it is just really weird that this person was not cooperating. Surveillance cameras had shown the two boarding the yacht from a bar on the docks. Anyway, 3 years after her disappearance, her family is still looking for her and hoping for answers. Heslop's mother has even pleaded with Bain to supply police with any information about her daughter. Bain maintained that he was, quote, heartbroken by the whole thing but has never cooperated with authorities. Age 42. Every week, on Thursdays, always at the same time, Viktor Hanchar, age 41, an opposition politician in Belarus, Europe, and businessman Anatol Krasowski met at a sauna. On the evening of September 16, 1999, they did the same thing, only this time at about 9 p.m., Hanchar called his wife and asked her to record the news. This was back when videotapes were a thing. He was interested in what conversation the president wants to have with the police. The two then left the sauna at 10:45 p.m. in Anatol's Jeep, but that was the last time they were ever seen. Some evidence of foul play, headlight specks, and blood on the asphalt were found near the sauna, but investigations were not forthcoming. Anyway, the case would later go on to involve the KGB and other law enforcement agencies, and eventually, suspicion was that some agencies had been used by the president to frustrate opposition politicians, Viktor being one of them. Age 43. On March 22nd of 2003, 43-year-old Frederick Nerok, a journalist for the UK-based ITN Television, was reported missing while on duty, covering the invasion of Iraq. That fateful morning, ITV Newsroom was notified that the team in Iraq had come under intense fire in Basra in an exchange between US Marines and Iraqi forces, and that there were sadly casualties. One team member, Terry Lloyd, a British Star reporter, was confirmed deceased, with the whereabouts of Frederick and Hussein Osman remaining unconfirmed. Despite launched investigations and inquiries, the only progress recorded later in the year was that Frederick and his colleague had been driving in a Jeep clearly marked TV. That car and the two somehow vanished, never to be seen again. Age 44. On June 2nd of this year, 44-year-old Elizabeth Nivens went missing from her home in Houston East RV Park. Unfortunately, her body would be found a few days later, and essentially no information exists as to how she ended up that way. The only detail shared by Chambers County Sheriff's Office is that Nivens had set out of her residence at 7 p.m. walking east towards I-10. She had left behind all her belongings, which was concerning. Officers were able to trace her via surveillance and point to her last known location as the 19500 block of Old Needle Point Road. The Texas Search and Rescue Texar personnel got into action and they spent hours on foot, ATVs, canine dogs, and drones trying to find her. And they did, but sadly not alive. They found her body within the search area. Age 45. In 2000, Bruno Manser, a Swiss activist, was reported missing somewhere deep in the Penang rainforest in Malaysia. In general, the 45-year-old was known to have loved spending his life out in nature and interacting with remote communities. This included engaging in rather unconventional activities like herding animals, making butter and cheese, and going on excursions in alpine pastures during summers. Also, before his disappearance, he had fought for the indigenous Penang rainforest by actively protesting against the large-scale logging activities that had been going on. All that arguably genuinely good work that it allegedly got him, quote, assimilated into the local community. Strangely though, he was in Malaysia illegally. He didn't have the right papers, so he had to play a cat and mouse game with local authorities. Anyway, sadly his fate was sealed in the late 90s. This was right after he left Malaysia momentarily for a world tour campaign against logging, before eventually returning and going on a solo trip. This was in 2000, and for some reason, he left his filming crew behind in a place called Borneo and insisted on seeking the indigenous tribe in the forest alone. No one has heard from him since, including the communities he fought for. Age 46. As of this year, one family in Alabaster, that of Olin Guy Kirby, will have spent 49 years looking for one of their own. The 46-year-old, a shoe salesman, went missing on March 13, 1975 after leaving home for work. No one had noticed though until he didn't come home that night. This prompted his family to report the case to the police, and according to the investigator in charge, Mr. Kirby was last seen that evening in Shelby in a truck with a group of people, most of whom, maybe strangely or not, are now deceased. Despite searches, polygraph tests, and DNA matching, no progress has been recorded in the case. Kirby's brother-in-law believes that due to the slack in initial investigations, the window for finding him grew slim. The family, however, still holds hope of either finding him or at least knowing what happened to him. Age 47. Imagine celebrating your daughter's graduation, and then right after the night of celebration, you, your daughter, and her friend end up missing. This is exactly what happened in the case of 47-year-old Cheryl Levitt, who had attended the graduation of her daughter Susie on June 6, 1992. After the school graduation, Cheryl left Susie and her friend Stacy McCall to enjoy with their mates, and they did. The girls had a great time moving from one place to the other before finally heading home. However, the next morning, as friends went to check in on the girls in Cheryl's house, none of the women were there, and to make it worse, their phones and messages went unanswered. According to an update from the Springfield Police Department Public Affairs officer, it was confirmed that the girls indeed got home the previous night, since their jewelry, clothing, and purses they had worn the previous day were found in the house. Cheryl's car was also found within the compound. No one has ever heard from Cheryl or the girls since. Age 48. On September 15, 2019, Lucy Evelyn Schulman was reported missing. The 48-year-old woman from Louisville had rented a vacation home in Coral Bay on St. John, where it was said she'd been on a hiking trip. While it's alleged that she left the house for a hike, two things did not add up. First, her vehicle was retrieved in the parking lot of the Virgin Islands National Park. 2. Her necessities, including her backpack, passport, and other personal belongings, were discovered close to the edge of a cliff on top of Ram Hill Trail. Arguably, no hiker leaves their gear and supplies behind. Then, according to authorities, she could not have fallen off the cliff, since given the jagged nature of the trail below, including the ramhead being largely rocks, she could have easily been found. And she wasn't. Her search was interrupted by Tropical Storm Karen. To date, no one has heard from Lucy, and her remains have never been found. Age 49. Kelly Gravit, a 49-year-old man from Cass County, was dropped off by his family at the Sacred Heart Serenity Springs facility on November 10th of 2023. The veteran and Purple Heart receiver had suffered a severe brain injury while serving in the military, and on the day of his disappearance, he was meant to seek mental health from the facility. In less than 30 minutes of being there though, he checked himself out and has never been seen since. Desperate to find their kin, Kelly's family created a GoFundMe fundraiser and asked for help from the community, but to date, no progress has been made in the case. As of March 2024, Kelly's mom still prints out flyers in search of their son, stating that while it may seem that all hope of finding him is lost, she is still very hopeful of getting at least some information on his whereabouts. Age 50. Alright, so now we are officially halfway through the video. First of all, thank you guys for watching this deep in. This is insane that you're still here. I appreciate it so much. If you do like the video so far, I'd appreciate leaving a like button, engaging with the video somehow, leaving a comment or something. And also, obviously, if I haven't earned your subscription, don't worry, keep watching. I will. But if I have, it would be awesome if you could click that subscribe button. Let's keep talking about age 50 though. In New Canaan, Connecticut, Jennifer Doulos, a 50-year-old mother of 5, went missing sometime after dropping her children at school on May 24, 2023. It hadn't been until around 7 p.m. though, after efforts to reach her bore no fruits, that an official missing persons report was made. A search ensued and her vehicle, a black SUV, would later be found abandoned along Lapham Road by Waveney Park. Surprisingly, further investigations to the case led to her estranged husband and his then current girlfriend being prime suspects. They were interrogated by the police owing to Jennifer's claims and a prior affidavit about their divorce earlier that year. She stated that she feared of her family's safety due to her husband's controlling and volatile behavior. The two were however released after pleading not guilty and posting bond. Later, in January of 2020, Doulos attempted to end his life on his farm, citing mental troubles due to the allegations against him. The case remains active and Jennifer is still yet to be found. Age 51. Samantha Murphy, a 51-year-old Australian woman, left her home in Ballarat, Victoria on February 4th of 2024 and headed out for a morning run but never came back home. The previous night, during dinner with her husband and some mutual friends, she had talked about how she picked up running and walking on the regular and how the following morning she would do an 8.7-mile run at a nearby park, that being the Wuwu Karung Regional Park. CCTV footage showed her leaving at 7 a.m., but that was the last time she was ever seen. Her family reported her missing after she missed their family's Sunday brunch, held at 11 a.m. that same day. Age 52. On June 16th of 1990, a Saturday at about 9:30 in the morning, Trevelyan Evans opened her antique shop as usual and went on to serve customers. Her shop was located in a relatively small town in Denbighshire, Wales, United Kingdom, and so it was usual for friends to come by to the shop. In fact, some did, and according to them, she seemed relaxed and calm and even had plans to go out that night. At 12:40 p.m., she left a note at the store saying, "Back in 2 minutes." This was also around the time she was seen talking to a smartly dressed man. It's never known if she ever came back to the shop. She seemed to have disappeared around that time, leaving behind everything, including her car. The last suspected sighting of her was at 3:45 p.m. on a street known as Park Avenue. Age 53. Ambrose Joseph Small was a rather successful entrepreneur in Canada, owning 4 theaters in Ontario, including the Grand Opera House in Toronto and Grand Theatre in London. Now, right before his disappearance, Small is said to have sold all his stake in these theaters, pocketing about 1.7 million Canadian dollars. He briefly met his lawyer around 5:30 p.m. on the same day before finally vanishing. Surprisingly, this was on December 1st of 1919, and it wasn't until early 1920 that he was truly noted as missing. He'd apparently formed a habit of going on long journeys for days at a time, so people just assumed he was on one of those. Age 54. On December 7th of 1958, Kenneth Martin, age 54, his wife, Barbara Martin, and their 3 daughters, Barbara, Virginia, and Susan, went out on their Ford station wagon on what was supposed to be a short drive to Columbia River Gorge to collect some greenery to be used in decorating their home for Christmas. They even left dishes in the sink and laundry in the washer because, again, this was just supposed to be a short trip. Unfortunately, over 65 years and 8 months later, no one knows what happened to them. They never came back home. The bodies of Virginia and Susan were found several months later, about 30 miles apart on the shores of the Columbia River. The suspected cause of death was drowning. 3 of them have never been found, and the family vehicle was also never recovered. Age 55. It's so unfortunate that after helping lots of people as an anti-kidnapping expert, Felix Batista himself ended up being kidnapped in Mexico and has never been found. Batista, who is also a former US Army major, is said to have negotiated at least 100 kidnappings and ransom cases, a good number of those being in Mexico. He was, however, based in Houston, Texas, working for a firm known as ASI Global. On one of his trips to train, advise, and negotiate in Mexico, while outside a restaurant in Saltillo, Coahuila, Mexico, he was grabbed by unknown assailants and whisked away in a Jeep. Weirdly, the victim he had gone to negotiate for got released an hour after Batista was taken. Nothing about Batista has came up ever since. Age 56. David Osborne, while on vacation in Kauai, Maui, was supposed to take a flight from Hana Airport in Maui on August 34th, 2022 to meet a friend at the San Francisco airport. This was so that they together could take a connecting flight. He, however, never showed up. The 9 a.m. meeting time they set came and went with no communication from him. It would later be determined that he actually never made it to the Hana Airport in Maui in the first place. The last sighting of him appeared to have been the previous night, on August 30th of 2022, at around 8 p.m. at his vacation rental in Hana. He had not rented any vehicles while in Maui, which made tracing him even harder. Age 57. In 2001, 57-year-old Tot Tran Harriman, also known as Totsi, was supposed to take a drive along Route 35 between League City and Corpus Christi, having left her son's home in League City at around 5 a.m. that day. She, however, never made it to Corpus Christi. Somewhere along the way, she seemed to have disappeared. Her car, a metallic rose 1995 Lincoln Continental with custom plates Totsi in all caps and a Navy SEAL emblem, also went missing. Her family immediately noticed because apparently it was unlike her to go hours without calling or checking in somehow. Unfortunately, even after hiring a private investigator and soliciting help from volunteers to comb along Highway 35, nothing ever came up. Age 58. In 2007, as the Afghanistan war was going on, the US government, via the CIA, enlisted the help of former DEA and FBI agent Robert Allen Bob Levinson for an undisclosed task in Iran. Unfortunately, while on his mission, Levinson was captured somewhere in Kish Island, Iran, never to be seen again. The suspicion was that he might have been held captive by the government of Iran, although Iran themselves denied having him. Some documents would, however, later reveal that he was detained under the order of Iranian military prosecutors on suspicion of spying. He was held at a military airfield for months despite slipping into a coma due to his diabetes. Years later, on March 25th of 2020, his family declared him dead. And interestingly, they received $2.5 million from the CIA as the agency wanted to stop any lawsuit that would cause details of Levinson's assignment in Iran to be revealed. Age 59. Some of you might have watched Tiger King, in which case you'd appreciate how messy Joe Exotic was. Now, this next case, that of Jack Donald Lewis, aka Don Lewis, got featured somewhere in that show because Lewis's second wife, Carol Baskin, had a beef with Joe Exotic. Anyway, focusing on Lewis, he disappeared on the morning of August 18th, 1997, after making a delivery at his Wildlife on Easy Street sanctuary in Tampa around 6 a.m. His white 1989 Dodge Ram van would later be found at the Pilot Country Airport in Spring Hill, Florida, which is 40 miles away from his sanctuary. Investigations began and police even visited his 200-acre park in Costa Rica to find clues. They generally believed that there was no foul play. However, Lewis was known to have had shady business deals over there and also some extramarital affairs, and then, strangely, Baskin, his wife, refused to take a polygraph test regarding the disappearance. He was declared legally dead in 2002, but then as recently as last year, some were claiming he is still alive. Age 60. The case of Riaz Ahmed Gohar Shahi is pretty interesting because it edges into some spiritual beliefs that made it difficult to separate possible real sightings from anything else. For context, Shahi was a spiritual leader from Pakistan known for founding RAGS, an international religious group, and authoring a number of books in the Urdu language on matters of spirituality. He went missing while in London in 2001, and since then, there's been a lot of speculation regarding his whereabouts. Some think he died in 2001, while others believe he died in 2003. Neither of these accounts have been truly confirmed. Then, even stranger, there have been claimed sightings of him around the world where apparently people say they've received spiritual guidance from him. Age 61. On the morning of March 26 this year, Christina Ace left her home in Vancouver, Washington, and was on her way to Rose Lynn Care Center in West Lynn, Oregon, where she worked as a nursing director. She, however, never made it there. That's despite her having been excited about that day, as they were to hold a staff training and also having texted her coworkers at 6:34 a.m. saying she'd be late by an hour, meaning she'd get there at 8:30 a.m. A few hours went by, and having failed to reach her, her boss called Christina's husband, who was the emergency contact, and he was surprised to learn that she had plans to start work later than usual that day. Anyway, he reported the case to the police and a search began, but as of this video's upload, nothing has come up yet. There's a Facebook group dedicated to helping look for her. Age 62. This year still, a Florida-based businessman went missing in Jamaica and is yet to be found. 62-year-old Fabian Hammond is said to have taken a flight on June 15th at the Miami International Airport, headed to Jamaica, and arrived at the Norman Manley International Airport on the same day. His friend picked him up and dropped him off at his Kingston home. That was, however, the last time he was seen. His daughter, Fiona, told local news it was unlike Fabian to go MIA, hence why they were so concerned. Later, police visited his house and found the luggage he traveled with, but nothing else. The search is still on, and it has helped a bit that his brother is Baris Hammond, a well-known Jamaican reggae artist. Also, a $1 million reward has been put up for anyone with information that can help find him. Age 63. Jim Gray was an experienced sailor, and on January 28, 2007, he took what was supposed to be a short solo trip to the Farallon Islands near San Francisco to scatter his mother's ashes. Nothing seemed odd that day, as the weather was clear, so it was thus absurd that later that day, Gray and his boat were reported to have suddenly gone missing, and no distress call had ever been received or any signal from the boat's emergency position indicating radio beacon. Immediately, a lot of effort went into try to find him. A 4-day search, for instance, was done using planes, helicopters, and even boats. Tons of satellite images were also analyzed, and high-tech underwater equipment was used to try to scour the ocean floor. Still, nothing ever came up. He was declared legally dead in 2012. Age 64. Since March of 2015, Beckenridge and his 11-year-old stepson, Mike Zhao Beckenridge, have been missing from New Zealand. Apparently, on the day that they went missing, John had grabbed Mike from school, breaching a parenting order, and taken him to an area known as Catlins, which is on the southern side of New Zealand at the coast. Why would he steal his son? Well, it turns out that he divorced his wife, Fiona Liu, just a month prior, with Liu getting full custody of Mike, but then Mike sent John emails requesting to be reunited with him and even mentioning self. Anyway, John and Mike were said to have camped around in the Catlins before finally vanishing. John's car would later be found at the bottom of a cliff in Curio Bay. It's unclear what happened to them, although some are convinced both are okay, just hiding out in Asia. Age 65. Lydia Abrams, also known as Dia, went missing from her 116-acre ranch in Mountain Center, California on June 6, 2020, and more than 4 years later, no one knows what happened to her. Her fiancé and ranch manager, 73-year-old Keith Harper, said that one day she disappeared. They had had lunch together at about 2:30 p.m. before he went on to do some work on the property. The two were also supposed to take a trip to Colorado the next day. It was thus surprising to Keith when he came home at 7:30 p.m. and couldn't find her. He found her phone charging in the bedroom and her purse still there, but she was nowhere to be seen. The next day, a 26-person team began looking for her on the property, but she wasn't found. She remains missing. Interestingly, also in November of 2023, Keith was delisted as the estate co-trustee after allegedly trying to sell it off. Age 66. Yvonne Jeanette Mulliken was officially reported missing on April 4th, 2024, after one of her daughters was concerned, having only gotten through to her via phone 2 days earlier, on April 2nd. She notified the Prescott Valley Police Department, and immediately, Yvonne was entered into the national database that contains missing persons information. Police were unable to contact her as well, but then 3 weeks later, her car, a 2012 Kia Sorento, was found abandoned at State Route 260 and Forest Road 144. That's 50 miles away from her home. And it was estimated that the car had been sitting there for at least 3 weeks. Inside the car was a note that she'd called roadside services and asked for the car to be towed to an auto service shop in Payson. Yvonne and her 2 dogs have never been seen since. Age 67. In August of this year, Tom Doherty, a 67-year-old retired doctor from St. Albans, Hertfordshire, took off for a solo traveling and camping trip to La Garonne, an area in southern France. However, unfortunately, on August 6th, his family lost communication with him and he hasn't been seen since. On that particular day, he had apparently been hiking and camping at an area called Col d'Escats and had texted his family a series of WhatsApp messages, one of which read, "Help, had fallen and cannot move. And as if things couldn't get any worse, the area where he'd been hiking, which bordered Spain and Andorra, had been experiencing severe weather. He also never shared his exact location in the messages. Anyway, a search involving sniffer dogs, helicopters, and drones began after 5 days. It was called off as there was no progress. The investigation is still ongoing though. Age 68. In October of 2018, 68-year-old Malcolm Madsen, a retired real estate agent and jeweler from Sutton, Ontario, flew to Mexico where he was reportedly enjoying a good time with his girlfriend of 6 years, 48-year-old Marcela Acosta Ramos. Unfortunately, that was the last time his family ever saw him. On the specific day he went missing, October 28th, he was captured by cameras at a popular tourist joint, Andale's Restaurant and Bar, having drinks with his girlfriend Marcela. Strangely, at one point, Madsen goes to the washroom and Marcela can be seen taking out a white pill from her purse, which she later sprinkles into his drink, which he then sips several times. The couple then get out of the bar and into a taxi, and Madsen is never seen again. He's still missing, but Marcela, her son Andres, and brother Martin got charged in the case and sentenced to 56 years and 3 years in a Mexican prison. Age 69. On June 18, 2024, Rodney Riviello, a 69-year-old man from Plymouth, Massachusetts, was checked into the Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital after suffering a fall. He got treated and discharged but went missing right after. He apparently left the hospital at around 11:15 a.m., and because his taxi voucher had been delayed, he had become agitated and just chose to find his way home. Definitely difficult to track him because he had no phone or wallet and was suffering from dementia. Later, police say they suspected a silver Nissan Armada that was seen picking up passengers at the hospital's driveway around 12:20 p.m. had something to do with his disappearance. A massive search involving hundreds of police officers went on, but nothing came out of it. There's no update on the case yet. Age 70. It's been 18 years since Stephanie, a fire lookout scout in Alberta, went missing from her station, and still no one really knows what happened to her. She had been serving as a full-time lookout, meaning she lived at the tower at least through the summer months, and was stationed at the Athabasca Fire Lookout overlooking the Tonquin Valley, just about 8 miles from the nearby town of Hinton. She also wasn't new to fire scouting as she had about 13 years of experience at the tower. Now, up until August 26th, all had been well, but then that morning, she failed to report the tower's weather condition to the head office. Officers were sent to check in on her. They found a pot of boiling water on the stove with an indication it had been boiling for a long time, almost completely evaporating. They also found her pickup truck still parked outside, but then more alarmingly, the steps at the entrance of the cabin had spots of blood on them. Later, they also discovered 2 pillows, a comforter, and a gold watch were missing. It's suspected that Stephanie was kidnapped and murdered. No one knows for sure though. Age 71. On August 31st, 2006, an American mobster named Anthony Zizzo, aka Little Tony and Little Toes, went missing from Cook County, Illinois, and has never been seen again. Little Tony, who was a well-known figure owing to the fact that he was a high-ranking Chicago mobster, had been headed to a business luncheon at a restaurant in Melrose Park, but he never made it there. He wasn't reported missing until later that day when his wife, Susan, went to the Westmont police to notify them that her husband hadn't returned home that evening. His car, a Jeep Cherokee, was found near the restaurant and his credit card showed that he had stopped for gas on his way there. Nothing else has ever come up. Age 72. For 20 years, Earl Sebastian lived with his daughter and granddaughter in his Grandview Avenue, Norwalk home. However, on September 10th, 2024, a Tuesday, he was reported missing and is yet to be found. Michaela Goth, his stepdaughter, said that on that Tuesday morning, she had gone downstairs to check on him before leaving to work, but he wasn't around. She assumed he'd just gone to the corner store down the street, but later that day, her mom texted her that he still hadn't returned. That was when they contacted the police. Later investigations revealed that Sebastian was seen at a South Norwalk train station on that same day at around 8:30 in the morning. Age 73. It's not known for sure, but it's suspected that Marvin Alvin Clark was either 73 or 74 years old when he disappeared back in 1926. Clark, whose case is considered the oldest active missing persons case in the US, went missing mysteriously while en route from Tigard, Oregon to visit his daughter who was living in Portland at the time. Some witnesses claimed to have seen him at a bus terminal, dressed in a dark suit and slacks, but that information was never substantiated. Also, even stranger, it was said that a little over a week after he went missing, on November 9th, Clark's wife Mary received a postcard from Bellingham, Washington, apparently sent by Clark himself. It was also said that there were several witnesses in Bellingham who had seen him in the area between November 2nd and 3rd. There have been attempts to find him and some false alarms along the way, but still, he's never been found. Age 74. This is a recent case, yet short in details. Jesse Lee Edwards, a 74-year-old from Pritchard, Alabama, was reported missing on September 3rd and is yet to be found. Media reports on the case simply indicate that the Pritchard Police Department has been looking for Edwards and considers him an endangered person. He was last seen around 6 p.m. on September 3rd in the area of Tallapoosa Street wearing a checkered shirt and blue jeans. He also has short hair. Age 75. As of the end of September 2024, 75-year-old Willie Washington would be missing for close to 5 weeks. According to police reports, Washington was reported missing on September 11th, but his family said they hadn't seen or heard from him since August 29th. He was last seen at the 1300 block of 4th Terrace West in Birmingham and is said to be likely suffering from undiagnosed dementia. This condition was also said to make him attempt to travel to St. Louis. In terms of physical features, he's 6 feet tall, 195 pounds, and has brown eyes and black hair. Age 76. On August 15th, an Australian man, William Wadsworth, left his caravan at a park, the acclaimed tourism park, and went on what was supposed to be a day of prospecting and exploring the backcountry of the Norseman region. This is somewhere between the South Australian border and the city of Perth. According to local police, Norseman is enticing for travelers due to its historical sites, but can however get dangerous really quickly, as even little amounts of rain can render the roads difficult to navigate. A preliminary search showed tracks, presumably from Wadsworth's car, disappearing into the bushland but nothing coming out. A search to try to locate his vehicle has been ongoing. Age 77. There's a pretty strange case from Argentina where 77-year-old Jorge Lopez went missing from the city of Buenos Aires after testifying against a dictator that was facing criminal charges in the country. Now, there's definitely a lot to the story, but in short, Lopez testified against Miguel Echecolatz, a former police head in the city that had played a key role in the kidnappings and murders of hundreds of innocent Argentinians during the military dictatorship era, and Lopez's testimony was no ordinary one. It was like the last nail in the coffin against Miguel, and so Lopez going ahead and taking the stand multiple times was going to clearly bury Miguel. Knowing this, Miguel organized for Lopez to be kidnapped. In one of the trials, Miguel was seen carrying a piece of paper that when a photographer captured and zoomed in on it, had the message, "Kidnap Jorge Julio Lopez." Then, on September 18th of 2006, on his way to the courthouse from his home in the Los Hornos neighborhood, Lopez disappeared, never to be seen again. Age 78. In June of 2019, John Tossell went on a vacation in Greece, and on the 17th of that month, he was on the Greek island of Zante when he decided to go out for a walk. Unfortunately, that was the last time he was ever seen. Now, Tossell, before going missing, had spent the last 2 days at the village of Argosy with his partner Gil Griffiths, and nothing had been odd. On the third day, the morning of the 17th, CCTV footage shows him at 9:46 setting off from the hotel towards a monastery on Mount Skopos. It was usual for him to go on long walks and was even described as fit as a flea, so him being out for hours wasn't odd. However, when he didn't return by evening, that's when a report was made to the police and a search began. They scoured the mountainous region for clues, but nothing ever came up. It's like he vanished into thin air. Age 79. In March of this year, 79-year-old Judy Donovan had been hiking the Pureora Forest in New Zealand with a group of 3 but got separated at some point near Lake Taupo. Immediately, reports of them going missing were made, and soon enough, the other people in the group were located and helped except her. It was unclear how she got separated and just vanished, especially given her familiarity with the hiking trail. Reports indicated that she belonged to a hiking club, the Pukekohe Tramping Club, and had even been recognized as an outdoor Axis champion for leading the Pukekohe 5 Summits Trail project. Now, for context, Pureora is about 78,000 hectares of forest with thick canopy, waterways, and waterfalls, so even the best search effort could easily fall short. At one point, the police even used sniff dogs, but still, they found nothing. Age 80. This next one is from Canada, and although the details are very few, it still comes off as mysterious. It's the case of 80-year-old Adelard Hooley, who went missing on September 1st, 1986 and has never been seen again. Hooley, a resident of Birch Street in Timmins, Ontario, was last seen at his house by a neighbor and is said to have enjoyed walks, especially along the Pine Street South area. At the time he disappeared, he was wearing a gray suit jacket, blue hat, and green work pants. Age 81. Robert Merle Herod, an 81-year-old American citizen, owned a home in the 500 block of Carnation Drive in Placentia, California, where he lived with his 3 daughters. Despite his mailings and assets and property, he lived a quiet life in the lush neighborhood. This was, however, until 2009 when he mysteriously disappeared and his case came into the limelight. Just a few months prior, he had lost his wife of 50 years, Georgia, and was going through a mourning period for quite some time. He would then, however, rekindle an old love he had for Fontel, and they even got married. Then, as they planned for Fontel to move in with him, he began refurbishing his home. Unfortunately, he never got done. One day they had been working on it with his son-in-law when the son decided to go pick up some supplies from the hardware store. When he came back though, Herod wasn't around. Hours went by and still by evening, he was nowhere to be seen. Nothing ever came up despite a $10,000 reward for information on the 10th anniversary of his disappearance. Age 82. It has been 9 years since Thomas Messick Sr. went deer hunting with a group of friends and family in the woods of eastern Adirondacks in New York, but never got back. This was on November 15, 2015, a Sunday when the group of 7, who had been hunting together for decades, chose to kill some time in the woods and settled on an area near Brant Lake. They hadn't visited this area before though. Messick was assigned a role to be on the watch. He sat on a tree stump as a younger group of members went down on another end of the area and began pushing deer towards him and 2 others that had been on the same side as him, but just a little bit far off. Unfortunately, when they regrouped about an hour later, Messick was missing from his spot. The search that ensued in the 29 square mile area in Adirondacks is the biggest that had ever been seen and involved around 300 searchers. Nothing ever came up though. Age 83. This next one is particularly interesting because the individual in question who went missing wasn't reported for months, and then they got found a whole 30 years later. Patricia Kopta, while age 53, had last been seen in Pittsburgh in the summer of 1992, and strangely her husband, Bob Kopta, had not reported her missing until a few months later. His excuse? Well, he told the Ross Township Police that it wasn't uncommon for his wife to go missing for months at a time. His specific words are, quote, "drop out of sight for short periods," end quote. So he had waited from summer until fall before finally notifying the police. He said he came home one night and she was gone. Now, interestingly, in 2023, Patricia was found living at a nursing home in Puerto Rico. She had apparently meandered through the northern part of Puerto Rico before being taken in as a person in need by an adult care home. Age 84. 84-year-old Nadine Beach had been a resident at a senior living center in Lower Marion Township for barely 2 weeks in July of this year before surveillance showed her leaving the property. She hadn't been too happy to be admitted there, and unfortunately, she would be found dead days later in the Bryn Mawr area. According to the staff at the facility, they realized she wasn't in when she didn't show up for lunch, prompting them to check the facility's surveillance footage. An internal search ensued and involved about 70 staff, and then the police got involved and deployed drones, choppers, ATVs, and canines. That's how she ended up being found. Well, her body. Age 85. In another tragic missing person case involving an elderly care facility, 85-year-old Françoise Vriad went missing from a retirement home in France, only for her body to be discovered 3 weeks later in the advanced stages of decomposition. Walkers discovered her body about 2 miles from the retirement facility where she was hosted, and preliminary investigations had revealed no foul play, at least in the room where she lived. There was no sign of forced entry or traces of blood. Still, authorities treated her death as a murder, and the investigation went in that direction. It remains unclear, though, what happened to her. Age 86. It's been more than a year since 86-year-old Juan Chavez Carrillo hopped on his purple bicycle, rode out, and was never seen again. Carrillo, who was said to be suffering from several medical conditions, left home sometime after 7 in the morning on July 18th of 2023, and unlike the 2 other times that he'd gone missing, he hadn't returned after several hours. Also, he didn't carry his medication, an inhaler, eyeglasses, and dentures, and on him he only had $200. The phone he shared with his wife was also left behind. Now, despite an extensive search and a $5,000 reward for information, Carrillo remains missing. Age 87. On December 14, 2017, James Mitchell, an 87-year-old man from Golden, Colorado, crashed his son's pickup truck into rail cars at around 8 p.m. He then walked away before the police could arrive at the scene, and unfortunately, that's the last time anyone ever saw him. At the time of his disappearance, he had been wearing a black t-shirt, khaki cargo pants, and black athletic shoes. He was said to have blue eyes and thinning gray hair, and also, more importantly, he may have been suffering from dementia. He also didn't have any identification or a cell phone. Age 88. Saturday, June 8th was the last time anyone saw 88-year-old Myrtle Polk. She had been driving a 2004 black Lexus ES 330 with Texas plates BV7K204 in the 1100 block of Indian Creek Trail. According to her son, Philip Polk, it wasn't until June 9th, a Sunday, that her family became worried when Myrtle never showed up to their church, exciting Singing Hills Baptist Church. For context, the retired teacher was a very active church member and a very well-known and respected member of the South Oak Cliff community. At the time of her disappearance, she had been driving at night, something which her son said was out of her character, and she also sadly, like some of the previous cases, had early signs of dementia. Age 89. On April 26 of 2009, 89-year-old George Ross had just left his home alongside his wife and was driving right outside Glen Innes, a region in the Northern Tablelands, New South Wales, Australia. It was raining and unfortunately his car broke down in a flash flood. He decided to walk back about 2.5 miles to his house to get their other car and then come rescue his wife. He, however, never returned and was never seen again. Investigations revealed, though, that he had gotten home and picked up the other car. This car, though, was found abandoned 43 miles from their original destination. How so? Well, he had been suffering a memory loss problem and might have forgotten why he'd gone back for the car in the first place. It was suspected that he died near the Guy Fawkes National Park, which is also where his car was found. His remains were not recovered, so no cause of death is known. If he died, that is. Age 90. There's a 90-year-old man, John Ance, who went missing in LA back in 2015, and it's unclear if he was ever found. As reported by CBS News, Ance was last seen at 2 p.m. on a Thursday in the 100 block of Arden Boulevard driving a tan four-door 93 Volvo 940 that had California license plate 3FFN998. Unlike most of the cases that we've seen, Ance was said to have been in a good mental condition. He was also described as having hazel eyes, receding red hair, and stood at about 5 feet and 7 inches tall. He was last seen wearing tan pants and a beige short-sleeved shirt. Age 91. In a very similar case to the one we've just covered, 91-year-old Janet Teig went missing from her neighborhood in Novato, California, and no one has ever heard from her. Based on publicly available information, it's still unknown if she was ever found. Now, given the close-knit community she had lived in, neighbors reported not seeing her after just a day, and a preliminary investigation by Novato police led to surveillance footage of her leaving her home at around 2 p.m. the previous day, August 16th. She drove a dark green 2005 Scion XB with the plate 5MBF342. Also, an unfortunate twist in her case is that the police reported not having any emergency contacts for her and couldn't reach her family. Age 92. Although his body was later found, the disappearance of 92-year-old William Bill Weber was quite mysterious when it happened. Bill had last been seen at his home, the Fox Point Apartments complex in East Moline. This was before going missing for about 2 weeks. What puzzled his family is that due to having a bad knee injury, he would have needed someone's help to get down the stairs. Also, his car had been missing despite him, again, nursing an injury that had prevented him from driving for several months. In fact, he was using a walker at the time. Anyway, it wasn't until a couple of weeks later he even reported missing that his body and the car, a silver 2012 Chevy Malibu, were found in the Mississippi River. It was unclear how he ended up there. Age 93. This next one is a really strange case because how does a missing person end up in their own freezer in their own home? According to police reports, officers responded to a welfare check call by neighbors to Mary Hoskins in the 100 block of Paddock Street in Sebastian, Florida. The concerned neighbors said they hadn't seen Hoskins in a long time, which was unusual. Initially, officers tried entering her home, but after, quote, multiple unsuccessful attempts, they had to obtain a key with the help of one of the Hoskins family members living out of town. When they got in, they searched the place and then shockingly found her body in the freezer in the garage. Hoskins' 64-year-old daughter, Michelle Hoskins, who was apparently living with her at the time, simply said she hadn't seen her mother in a while. It would later come out that Michelle had found her mother dead a while back, and instead of reporting it to the police, she chose to hide her in the freezer so she could keep collecting her disability checks. Age 94. For about a week since December 18, 2022, 94-year-old Shirley Jean Erth was a missing person from San Juan Capistrano, California. She had been reported to have left her home without her wallet or cell phone at around 5 p.m., soon after which a critical missing person alert was issued. Her body would later be found along the San Juan Creek, which isn't far from her home. This had been done with the help of search dogs because, surprisingly, the area she was found in had already been covered by search and rescue teams, but they seemed to have missed her. It was suspected that dementia might have contributed to her death, as there were no signs of any crime related to her disappearance. Age 95. In another case of a missing elderly person with a tragic ending, 94-year-old Walter Curtis Wolf went missing from the 800 block of North Malgren Avenue on July 8th this year, and he would later be found dead in the cliffs at Point Fermin Park in San Pedro. This was apparently not far from the 800 block of West Paseo del Mar, Point Fermin, where Wolf was known to enjoy walks. In fact, that's where his vehicle was spotted. Anyway, once his body was reported to authorities, a helicopter was used to hoist it up before it was transported to the coroners for investigation. It was unclear how he ended up down there, dead. Age 96. Earlier this year, on June 14th, 96-year-old James Crowell vanished from his home in Colonial Drive, Carrollton, Georgia, having been last seen at around 10:20 a.m. that Friday morning. There's really not much detail as to how he went missing or where he was found, which actually makes this case a bit mysterious. The only publicly available information from the Villa Rica Police Department was that he was found dead at 9 p.m. on that same Friday. Age 97. There's also a similarly sad case of a missing 90-something-year-old being found dead in New Orleans. As per reports from the Criolla Police Department, Frank Williams, a 97-year-old man from Algiers, New Orleans East, was reported missing by his wife, Ethel, after he never showed up on New Year's Eve. Apparently, Williams had left for his destination, his wife's house, at 9:30 p.m., although he couldn't see well at night. Police pinged his cell phone and his location came back as Crayola. A search of the area led to his car, which was found abandoned on I-65. It had been northbound on US 43. His body was then found under a bridge. Officers suspected he might have left his car, walked on foot, then fell down the steep embankment. His family, however, thinks those facts don't add up, so it remains a mystery as to what really happened to him. Age 98. On August 14th in Crofty, Swansea, Wales, Reginald Rees, a 98-year-old man, was reported missing by his family. He had last been seen wearing light brown trousers, a light purple shirt, green body warmers, and Velcro shoes. He had also been driving a red Renault Captur. Now in a very similar manner as 97-year-old Frank Williams, which we just talked about, Rees would later be found in his car dead. The car was found first, off the coast off Rossili Bay. Then, upon a further investigation of the vehicle, it was determined that his body was inside. A post-mortem of his body revealed multiple injuries that were consistent with a collision. Age 99. At age 99, we have a woman simply referred to as Elva who went missing but then was quickly found. Her case fits in here because she seems to be the only or maybe few 99-year-olds that have ever been reported missing. Anyway, her story is that she went missing from her home in Clayton Road in Clayton, Melbourne at about 10 in the morning on March 29th this year, a move that was attributed to severe dementia. Her family was reportedly terrified but found comfort in the thought that she could have hopped on a train or a bus. Apparently, she knew buses were safe. Anyway, a day later, she was identified by a member of the public who had seen her case on television. She was safe and well. Age 100. Somewhere east of Klamath Falls, Oregon, not too far from the town of Bonanza, 100-year-old Nadine Kirk lived with her son, 62-year-old Ted Kirk, at least up until 2015. That statement is, however, not as simple as it sounds because as of 2017, it was just an assumption that Nadine was still alive, living somewhere else. It is by then, she'd have been about 100. She was reported missing in 2015 and was added to the National Missing and Unidentified Person System, and according to locals, they suspected she might have died at the property as far back as 2010, and the only reason for her, quote, missing status might have been a ploy by her son Kirk to defraud the state for benefits. He was alleged to be using her social security for benefits. Interestingly, according to the son, his mother left for California sometime between May and June of 2015. This was to go visit a friend. Which friend? Well, he didn't know. The last report on the case indicated there was a warrant out for Kirk's arrest. Hey guys, I wanted to include this little clip talking about how to best avoid being kidnapped. So first of all are obviously legal weapons. You could use mace, a taser, or even a pocket knife of some sort. And by the way, I will be leaving Amazon links, US and UK, in the description. So if you want to get yourself some safe legal weapons, no, I'm not sponsored by Amazon. That would be crazy. Literally just in the description. Also, let's talk about being in communication with a family member at all time. You can do this with apps on your iPhone such as Find My, and you could also use Life 360, which I'm pretty sure is available on both Android and iPhone. But yeah, always being in communication with someone, always sharing your location. Going back to the weapons, there's actually this like alarm thing where if someone's trying to kidnap you, right, you pull on it and it starts screeching incredibly loud, hopefully leading to the kidnapper to be like, I don't want attention, I'm gonna let go. That is another really good tool. I'm actually getting this advice from r/no-stupid-questions, so shout out to r/no-stupid-questions. But someone on here also recommends walking against traffic, not along with it. Don't use headphones while walking. Don't be on your phone. Every now and then check behind you. Basically just make sure you're aware of your surroundings. But yeah, that's basically all you can do when it comes to trying to prevent being kidnapped. Hopefully it never happens to any of you guys. But like I said, if you need any of those tools, if you would like to even look at their prices, whatever, links are down in the description. No, not sponsored in any way. I just want to make sure you guys are safe. Alright guys, that's it for this video. This one took a long time to record, just like when we do the one blank from each state or ages 1 to 100, I love these series, by the way. These take so much time, so I really do appreciate hitting that like button, engaging with the video somehow, sharing it with people, watching it. Where'd you watch it? Let me know. Where did you guys watch it? Did you guys watch this on the TV, on your phone, on the radio? Not radio, I'm stupid. In your car? Did you watch it with your family, with your partner? Let me know. I'm always interested. That's it for this one. Make sure to go watch the last video. It's a single topic video. I kind of don't do those, but it's about a caver that was stuck 27 hours in an uncomfortable, horrible position. But yeah, that's it for this one. I'll see you guys next time I upload.